Managing the rhythm of your story is all about displaying certain elements and expressing certain elements. Now, what do you want to show and what do you want to tell? First thing you want to display in a character is her origins. Now, what does origin imply here? If you display the character's origin, you display her needs, her wants, her expectations. The very elements which will be the basics of her identity. The second type of element you want to display are her interests. Show the type of people she's interested in, the type of items, the parts of the world she wants to visit the most. Displaying your character's interest allows you to display her personality. Finally, display her skills, her abilities, her techniques, the very elements she has cultivated through her origins from now that your story started. These are three core elements which you want to display to establish the background of your character and resume a backstory. Now, what should your character verbalize? What should your character express? Well, first and foremost, her goal. You can display what your character motivations are. You can display your character's intention. You can describe them also, but you can display it through your actions. But the goal, the very letter of the goal, should be expressed. Otherwise, it's only a guess. If your character doesn't say it directly, you can't expect the public to anything else than to guess it. There's no guarantee if the character doesn't say it. The second element you want your character to express are her desires. And that's part of the characterization process, because desires will be expressed by your character through dialogues, and particularly through signature phrases, signature expressions. These are the words of your character, which will characterize her the most. Now, same as for the goal, all of that is expressing her motivation, all coming from her origins, her expectation, and what she's attracted by. The last element you want to express, the last element you want your characters to express, are their weaknesses. Displaying one's weaknesses allows one to get more close, to get more intimate with another character. So when it comes to developing intimate character relationships or long-term character relationship, being able for one of your character or multiple of them to express their weaknesses is critical. Afterwards, how do you articulate the display and the expression? Well, the display will be displayed through actions and behavior. That's the main mean of display. And for the three next images will follow this process. The first part, the part in red, will be about displaying the actions and behavior. Second part in green will be about expressing, so through phrases and words. The third part will be about how to do it, so it's the procedure. And the fourth part in purple will be about why do it, so it's all about the purpose. So here we'll be studying the synergies between origins and goal in the very next image, then interests and desires, and finally skills and weaknesses. So it's all about studying the synergy between displaying and expressing. The first synergy between expressing and displaying is the synergy between origins and goals. Now, origins will often be displayed through the character's way of thinking, through the character's way of being. It's not exactly behavior here, because behavior will be translated. It will be the translation of goals. It will be the expression of the motivation of the character. Now, because the behavior emerges from the identity, there's a high degree of permeability between these two notions. But think about the origins of the character, the retranscription of the origins and identity of the character, mainly through the quirks, through the visual quirks and through some behavioral quirks. That's where the permeability comes into the picture. Now, the second trait, the goal, will be expressed, and now it will be expressed through the behavior of the character. Now, what are origins and goal have in common? Well, they're all about habits. Your character, as she has practiced a certain way of living since the day she's born, has acquired a certain degree of psychorigidity. She has certain patterns, and because of the patterns, she will act, she will behave, she will be a certain way. That's what habits are, and that's what habits translate. Habits are the synergy between origins, the displaying part, and goals, the expressing part. Now, what's the purpose of showing the character's habits? Well, displaying someone's habits creates a certain degree of familiarity with this individual. Even if you extend this idea, a certain degree of relatability with this individual. So the very fact of displaying and expressing the habits of the character. So for example, the character does a certain thing when she's in a crisis situation, she acts in another way when she's in comfortable situation, and she acts again in another way when she's in a research situation, will translate certain behavior and a certain identity. And therefore, based on this behavior and identity, you, as the author, the public, as a character of your story, and other characters in your cast will feel more or less familiar with this character, more or less, they can relate to this character more or less. The second pair, the second synergy, is interests and desires. Now, interests will be manifested by actions. Interests are manifested by acts. Your character goes to elements she's attracted by: people, items, situations. For desires, its phrases, its expression. Your character will say that she likes some element. Your character will say she enjoys certain activities. Your character will tell other characters about the people she loves. That's how they're expressed. Now, contrary to habits, when it comes to goals and origins, interest and desire will be even more situational. Habits are expressed in certain situations, but they remain broad patterns. The expression and the display of interests and desire is even more narrow. It's extremely specific to a situation which is not supposed to happen often. Remember, if you want to characterize a character, your character needs to be interested. Your character needs to have certain desires, and these interests need to be extremely specific, and these desires need to be extremely specific. They shouldn't be broad, they shouldn't be vague. That's why we're talking about a more situational framework here. Now, what's the purpose of doing that? You want to enhance the likability and relatability factor of your character. So you see that there's a degree of permeability here, because the very fact of expressing and displaying your character's habits creates a certain relatability. But this relatability is created through familiarity. Here it's different. Here it's likability. Again, the main difference between interest and desire and origins and goals is that origins and goals, and therefore habits, are broader, they're larger in terms of framework. Here, the likability factor will be created through an extremely specific situation. So you really target, you really trim the kind of attachment you create between the public and the characters, or between two characters. And then it's up to you to create the balance between this short-term relatability and long-term relatability. The third pair, the third synergy we want to study is the synergy between skills and weaknesses. Now, you could construe skills as strengths because it opposes to weaknesses. So the complementarity between strengths and weaknesses may be more obvious. So why choose skill? Because here we're thinking in a team scale. Your character exists through your story, and even if through your whole story she never gets a formal team, she never gets an official team, she will always be part of a group of characters, even if the other character in the group are all antagonists. You know, she will have to evolve in your story, in your world, as an individual which is part of a group. So her skills will be determined by the other teammates, even if they aren't specifically teammates. Now, the synergy between skills and weaknesses comes to the very fact that both are translating a certain degree of affinity. You know, the skills / strengths of a character and the weaknesses of a character will determine the behavior of this character, and compared behavior creates affinities in a relationship. Now, when it comes to displaying skills and expressing weaknesses, you have to go through the same process, but contrary to the other pairs, it will be slightly different. You want to display the successes of your character, and you want her to confess failures. It's much more effective that way. You know, if your character confesses her successes, she talks about her victories, can work as well, but it will not be the effect you're looking for here, and we'll deal with that in the why part afterwards. And if your character is displaying her failure, it will not create the same effect. Again, it's valid. You know, you can make your character talk about the victories, and you can display the failures of your character, but that's not the effect we're looking for here. Because what we're looking for here is transparency. If your character is able to display her successes, she's regarded as a reliable individual. You know, that's the first section of transparency here. And if your character is able to confess her failures, without disguising herself, she will be construed as honest. That's the second part of the transparency factor. So we are not creating a character which is only showing her victories and hiding her failures, or vice versa. No, we're creating a character here which is, and this is why it's not applicable in every situation, because here we're, I think, mostly focused on an protagonist or antagonist type of character, you know, the main characters. Because the other part of your cast, you want to make use of this diversity to create a profile with characters which are hiding their weaknesses, characters that are only displaying their strengths. But now we're trying to create a transparent character, and a transparent character shows her successes and tell about her weaknesses. If you like this video, you may enjoy this other piece of content. Also, what would you want more of? What should be done differently? Suggest us the content you need. This channel is made for you.